In this slide, I'm going to cover how cognitive distortions really don't serve us. They only serve to increase our worry, anxiety, and what if thoughts. So we all engage in cognitive distortions. Everybody has thoughts that are distorted, and it's just a thought. A thought is just a thought. So always remember that. So when we have a thought that is a cognitive distortion, it is really important to identify it and learn to label which type of cognitive distortion you're having. So that means you could be thinking through a series of negative thoughts, and every single thought is negative. Well, that means you're negatively evaluating everything, and the cognitive distortion for that is filtering the negative. So if you're doing that, it's really important to just be like, okay, I'm filtering right now. I've just thought of every negative thought related to that situation. Okay, I'm filtering the negative. Or you could be polarizing, where you're looking at things in black and white or all or nothing. Sometimes people reason with their emotions, and because they feel it, they think it's true, and their emotions are deciding and telling them things, but it's not based on logic or facts. Or sometimes people are disqualifying the positive. Again, that's related to filtering. So if you start filtering, you're reasoning with your emotions, you start disqualifying the positives, and at the end of the day, you're not looking at the whole picture. You're not looking at all the factors. So this is why it's really important to start labeling certain thoughts, or if you're listening to someone else and maybe they're just telling you all the negative details related to something, just be like, okay, they're filtering the negative. Okay, that's where they're at right now. But because what'll happen is they could be talking about all these negative things, and then it starts stirring up negative emotions in you. So if you start labeling it, it'll decrease the intensity of any felt emotions. So this is where labeling certain types of thoughts can really help us. And it also creates a file for us to put certain thoughts in. We're titling them, we're labeling them. So it's kind of like we got little folders in our brain, and we can kind of tuck it over there. Oh yeah, those are those filtering thoughts if they reoccur again. Because we know with anxiety, the same types of thoughts will reoccur, and they can recur over the same situation, and they can be transferred over to different situations. So this is where it's really important to start learning to label those thoughts and create those folders in your mind. So, the strategy really is when we notice, say, for example, we're filtering all the negative, or maybe you're catastrophizing, thinking about the what ifs, because when you start filtering the negative, disqualifying the positive, reasoning with your emotions, you're going to start engaging in catastrophizing, which is thinking about the worst case scenario, which is a what if. So you can see how this is a vicious cycle, and round your brain is going to go, and it's going to keep generating more and more of these types of thoughts. So, one strategy can be, labeling them, identifying them, and you can start writing them out and writing out that, okay, wait, these are my filtering the negative thoughts or my disqualifying the positive thoughts, and write out what they are. And you might want to write out what's the opposite to those thoughts. What are something that's contrary to that? And then you might just kind of look at both of them without any judgment, just kind of noticing them, and then look at what's the middle ground. What's the middle ground between the two streams of thoughts? Because you're thinking about things on opposite ends of the spectrum, and sometimes if we look at the middle ground, we get closer to the actuality of things, and it can be more balanced thought process to have. And then just notice, when you look at the thought that's based on the middle ground, how do you feel? Right? You're bringing balance in, you're bringing in a new way to think, and that can be the strategy where you're filtering the negative. Okay, go immediately. What are all the positives? Even if you don't believe them, what are they? And then go to the middle ground. And sometimes it's really hard to do this in our head because we're overwhelmed. We know emotions can kind of interfere with accessing logic. I'm not going to get into all that. So sometimes we need to start by just writing that down. What are my worried thoughts, label the cognitive distortions, and then put the opposite thoughts. What are the opposite? And then look for middle ground, and then look at what do those middle ground thoughts tell you, and how do you feel when you think of those middle ground thoughts? Because that can also later turn into ways to reassure yourself, and you can actually rewire your brain to start going towards thinking about middle ground thoughts eventually. So you're going to have to, again, practice this. It is a strategy. It does take time. We're rewiring our brain. So we know when we rewire our brain, you have to keep doing things over and over again until it becomes automatic. And eventually it will, because this is based on research and they've done studies on this. And then eventually your brain will have those reassuring, balanced thoughts, and you can just quail that worried thought quicker. So in the next slide, I am going to cover avoiding, because with worry, there is a tendency to engage in avoiding, could be thoughts, tasks, lots of things, and I'm going to cover that next. So stay tuned.